Okay, team, section 5.3. Before we get started, we're still going to be working on writing linear equations. Before we get started, we want to look at this concept of negative reciprocals because it's going to pop up not just later on in the lesson, but also throughout the rest of the year and even next year in geometry. So for a warm-up, what I want you to do is I want you to look at these 8 numbers. Some of them are whole numbers. Some of them are written as fractions. And I want you to take a look at them, and I want you to write the negative reciprocal for each one. And if you're not sure what that means, I'll give you a little example. So take a look at the 1/2, okay? I think you guys know that the reciprocal of 1/2 would be 2/1. The negative reciprocal is just going to be the opposite of that number. So for example, if we start off with positive 1/2, then the negative reciprocal will be a negative 2/1. So if it starts out positive, you'll end up negative. If it starts out negative, you'll end up positive. So go ahead and try to take the negative reciprocal of the remaining 7. Go ahead and hit pause now, and then you can unpause when you're ready to kind of check answers. We'll see how you did with this. Okay, well, on number 2, what do you think the negative reciprocal of 2/3 might be? Well, we're going to negate it, and we're going to take the reciprocal of it. Okay, so the reciprocal would be 3/2. The negative reciprocal would be negative 3/2. These are also referred to as opposite reciprocals sometimes. All right, 5 might have been a little bit tricky. Remember, 5 is the same as 5/1. So when you go to take the reciprocal of that, you get 1/5. The negative reciprocal would be negative 1/5. Same deal with negative 4. That could be thought of as negative 4/1. Remember, we're starting off with a negative number here. So to take the negative of a negative, we're going to end up with a positive answer. And the reciprocal is going to be 1/4. So positive 1/4. Same deal with the negative 3/4. The negative reciprocal will become positive 4/3. So hopefully you're getting the hang of this now. Okay. On number 6, 2 or 2/1, the negative reciprocal is going to be negative 1/2. Once again, we're just flipping the number and negating it. Negative 2/1, the negative reciprocal, is going to be positive 1/2. And then lastly, negative 1/5, it's going to become positive 5/1. And remember, 5/1 is the same as 5. Okay, so there's a look at negative reciprocals. Just kind of keep that in your back pocket for a second. It'll pop up toward the end of the lesson again. Okay, so here we go. 5.3, writing a linear equation given 2 points. So we've looked at writing equations given the slope and a point, writing the equation given the slope and maybe the y-intercept. Now we're going to work off the information of just having 2 points. It's almost too much information at some point in time. And you've seen this before. Anytime we're writing an equation, we can write it in slope-intercept form. When we do that, we write it as y equals mx plus b. So that means we need to figure out the m, or the slope, or we need to figure out the b, the y-intercept. Okay? And if we have 2 points, we can do that. So let's take a look at this one together. Go ahead and get your papers ready, because I want you to write this one down with me. It says, find the equation of the line that passes through the points -3, 1 and 5, 5. And basically, we're going to do 3 things here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to find the slope. Okay, and we're going to do that using the slope formula. After we find the slope, we're going to plug it in along with one of the points to work backwards to figure out the y-intercept, or the b value. And once we have both of those things, we can write the equation. Okay. So first thing I want you to do, like always, is go ahead and just somewhere write down y equals mx plus b. Right? The whole goal here is to figure out what that m value is, what that slope value is, and what the b value, the y-intercept, is going to be. So never forget your goal. Don't lose sight of your goal. And to figure out the slope, let's take a look at these 2 points. remember, we can use 2 points in the slope formula that we learned a little bit earlier. And if you want to go ahead and label these, this guy would be x sub 1, and the one over here would be y sub 1. And then this guy over here would be x sub 2, and this guy right here would be y sub 2. So anytime you have 2 points, you can work backwards to figure out the slope. Then I'd write down that slope formula, right? M equals y sub 1 minus y sub 2 all over x sub 1 minus x sub 2. Remember, we're looking at the change in the y's over the change in the x's. And you got everything labeled, so now you can just start plugging in. Okay, just be careful to watch your integer calculations, when you're using the formula. That's why I always like to set it up with my minus signs there already, so I don't even have to think about it. Okay, y sub 1 is going to be the number 1, and y sub 2 is 5. So that's going to be the change in my y's. X sub 1 is negative 3, and x sub 2 is a 5. So you just need to crunch those numbers. So let's see what it spits out for the slope. 1 minus 5 looks like negative 4. And negative 3 minus 8, remember that's type 1 subtraction. Get mugged twice, you're going to end up with a negative 8. Okay, so negative 3 minus 5 is negative 8. And then we can just simplify that. A negative divided by a negative is a positive, and 4 divided by 8 is 1/2. So it looks like our slope is a positive 1/2. Right? So we have half of the information we need. We kind of know what the slope is going to be for the m value. To figure out the b, now we can plug in one of our points. That way we have a value for x and we have a value for y. And when we have those 3 values, we can work backwards to figure out the 4th. So let's go ahead and try doing that. Let me go ahead and write down y equals 1/2 x plus b, sort of where we're at. Now we're just going to plug in an x value, and we're going to plug in a y value. And let's use that very first point, so the negative 3, 1. The y value is 1. The x value is negative 3. And then we still don't know the b, but we'll be able to use algebra to work backwards here. Okay, so we need to know how to do 1/2 times negative 3. If you're not comfortable with your fractions, you can do a little side work. That's 1/2 times negative 3 over 1, and that's just negative 3/2. Nothing to freak out over. Okay, so 1 equals negative 3/2 plus b. Okay, now we want to get b by itself. So our next step would be we would add 3/2 to both sides. And this would cancel out. And I'm going to get b equals, and you might be tempted to say 1 3/2, but that's kind of an awkward fraction. So you might want to rewrite your 1 as something over 2. And we know that 1 is the same as 2 over 2. So really what we're saying is 2/2 plus 3/2. Which is 5/2. So b is 5/2. It's also 2.5. It's also 2.5. Okay. So you've got your slope, you've got your y-intercept. Now you just need to combine this information to write your equation, which is going to be y equals 1/2 x plus 5/2. So it kind of combines a lot of the previous skills we've been working on. Okay? All right, feel free to go back and watch that again if it was too fast for you. But if you feel like you got it or you're ready to try, let's go ahead and do one. So this is your first blue example. It says write the equation for the line which passes through the points 5, negative 1 and 1, 7. I want you to go ahead and try this one on your own, and don't resume the video until you think you've figured it out. Okay, go ahead and pause now, and then unpause once you're ready. Okay, let's take a look and see how you did. Always like to begin with a y equals mx plus b somewhere. Just kind of remind me what it is I'm shooting for. And then hopefully you remember to label your points. We've got x sub 1 and y sub 1, and x sub 2 and y sub 2. So we'll begin by trying to figure out the slope. And we're going to use the slope formula for that. So remember, m equals y sub 1 minus y sub 2 over x sub 1 minus x sub 2. If you have 2 points, you can figure out the slope. And remember, the slope is half of the information. Okay, so it looks like my y sub 1 is negative 1. And it looks like my y sub 2 is 7. Looks like my x sub 1 is 5. And my x sub 2 is 1. So now I'm just going to crunch those numbers. Negative 1 minus 7, it's type 1, turns into get mugged twice, becomes negative 8. 5 minus 1 is just 4. And so it looks like we have a slope of negative 2. So now that we know our slope, we can go ahead and plug it in, and we're left with something like y equals negative 2x plus b. So we just need to figure out what the b is now. And this is the point where we're going to plug in a value for x and plug in a value for y. And you can use either of the points given. I'm going to choose to use this one, but you could use the 1, 7 if you wanted to. Okay, so it looks like my y value is negative 1. So I'll plug in a negative 1 for y. And my x value is 5. So plug in a 5 for x. And then it's just basic algebra from here on out. Negative 1 equals negative 10 plus b. And I'm adding 10 to both sides. And it looks like b equals positive 9. Okay, so you have your y-intercept, you have your slope. You're just going to combine both of those pieces of information to write your equation. So y equals negative 2x plus 9. And hopefully you were able to get that one right on your own. If so, you're ready to try the next one. So let's go ahead and start over. This time, you're just kind of practicing to make sure that you have this down. It says write the equation for the line which passes through the points 9, negative 2 and 3, negative 4. And if you do this one correctly, it's going to involve a fraction somewhere. So I wanted to give you some practice with fractions. Go ahead and hit pause now and do this on your own, and unpause once you're ready to resume and go over answers. Good luck. Okay, let's see how you did. We're trying to get something in slope-intercept form. I'm going to go a little bit more quickly through this one. To find the slope, we're going to use slope formula. I'm just going to go straight into setting this up. I usually like to write it out. Y sub 1 is negative 2, and y sub 2 is negative 4. So be very careful with your integers there. X sub 1 is 9, and x sub 2 is 3. So when we're going for the slope, it looks like negative 2 minus negative 4, that's negative 2 plus 4. That's a war. Positives win. They win by 2. 9 minus 3 is 6. So we have 2 over 6. We just need to reduce that. And when we reduce that, we get 1/3. Okay, so we have a slope of 1/3. Remember, that's a positive slope. It's going up the roller coaster, and it's gradual. Okay, now I'm going to use that 1/3, plug in what I know. So y equals 1/3 x plus whatever the y-intercept is going to be. And now I just need to plug in an x and a y value. So I think I'm going to choose the 9, negative 2 point to plug these in. So my y value is negative 2 equals 1/3 times my x value, which is 9, plus b. Negative 2 equals, let's see, 1/3 times 9 is 3. So 3 plus b. And then to get b by itself, I'm just going to take away 3 from both sides. And that leaves me with a negative 5. So b equals negative 5. And hopefully you were able to get that. Now I'm just going to combine the information. And that brings me to my equation. Y equals 1/3 x minus 5. So positively sloped, gradually sloped, and crossing the y-axis at negative 5. Okay, if you weren't able to get these, you're probably going to need some extra help. Plan on asking your group members tomorrow, or maybe to come see me after school, that type of thing. Let's kind of move on to a different type of problem now. So in the last lesson, I believe, 1 or 2 lessons ago, we talked about parallel lines, and parallel lines had the exact same slope. Okay, tonight we're going to talk about perpendicular lines. Okay, perpendicular lines don't have the exact same slope, but they do have slopes that are related. Okay, it says the slopes of perpendicular lines have a product of -1. That is, the slopes of perpendicular lines are negative reciprocals of each other. And I just kind of want to pause here. All right, think about the negative reciprocal work that we did at the beginning of the lesson. If I gave you a number like 3, okay, and we said that the negative reciprocal of that would be -1/3. Okay, think about what these numbers as slopes would look like on the coordinate plane. And we talked about this earlier in the year. A number like +3, okay, that's definitely going to be a positive slope. It's pretty steep going up the roller coaster. It's going to look something like this. Okay, pretty steep. -1/3, however, the negative implies that it's going down, and the 1/3 implies that it's going down gradually. Okay, so if I were to draw a -1/3 slope, it might look something kind of like this, going down the roller coaster gradually. Notice that when these two lines intersect, they intersect in a very special way. Okay, they are perpendicular to each other, which means they intersect at 90-degree angles. So if you want to create perpendicular lines, the trick is to have two equations with slopes that are negative reciprocals or opposite reciprocals of each other. Just like when we wanted to create parallel lines, we knew that we'd have to have slopes that were the exact same. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at an example problem. We can do this one together. I do want you to write it down with me. It says write the equation for the line that is perpendicular to the line y equals 2x plus 5, and which travels through the point 4, -1. So what they've done is they've given us one point, and they've given us the equation of the line that's going to be perpendicular to our line. So same deal, we want to find the slope, we want to find the y-intercept. And we'll begin with the slope. And this is pretty easy because you don't have to do any work, you just have to think about it, you have to understand what's going on. We know that the slope of the other line is 2. That means the slope of our line is going to be the negative reciprocal of that number. So what is the negative reciprocal of 2? Okay, so hopefully you remember from the beginning, that's going to be -1/2. Okay, so if you want to be perpendicular to 2, you're going to have to use a slope of -1/2. So our slope is going to be -1/2. Kind of give you a quick graphic of what that's going to look like. Their line is going up like this, maybe slope of 2. It might not even be steep enough. Slope of 2, maybe more like this. Our line is going down gradually, -1/2, something like that. And those would make perpendicular lines. Okay, so we can go ahead and insert our slope right in for m. Because it's perpendicular, we know that ours is going to be -1/2. We just need to figure out the y-intercept. And this is no different than what we've done any other time. Okay, how are we going to figure out that b value? Well, we're going to plug in a point. So we have a value for x, and we have a value for y. And our point's sitting right over here, just waiting to be used. So I will plug in that -1 for the y value, and that 4 for the x value. And then when you crunch the numbers, -1/2 times 4 is -2. And now you're just doing basic algebra. So it looks like b equals 1. So when you combine the information, you get y equals -1/2 x plus 1. And you know, if you ever want to go back and check to make sure that that's actually correct, you can come back and look at this point, right? If you plug that point in there, it should make a true statement. So negative 1 equals negative 1/2 times 4, which is negative 2. Negative 2 plus 1 is negative 1. Negative 1 equals negative 1. So that point kind of checks out. That's always a good double check to make sure that you're doing it correctly. Okay, so to sum up, take the negative reciprocal of that slope if your lines are perpendicular. That's how we got the negative 1/2. And then just plug that in for m and do the exact same thing we've been doing. Use the point for x and y, work backwards to figure out b. Okay, last problem on your own. Here's example 3. Write the equation for the line that is perpendicular to the line y equals 1/4 x minus 7, and which passes through the point 2, 5. Okay, so if you can do this one on your own, you're going to be pretty good to go. So go ahead and hit pause now, try this on your own, and then resume when you're ready to go over the answer. Okay, so hopefully you have an answer in front of you. I'm just going to go ahead and set up my y equals mx plus b. One thing I like about these problems is we don't have to go all the way through the slope formula. So we know that our line is perpendicular to this line, okay? And this line has a slope of 1/4. So that means our line is going to have a slope that is the negative reciprocal of 1/4. So you have to get this part right. What is the negative reciprocal? Well, the reciprocal is 4/1. That means the negative reciprocal is going to be negative 4/1. And that just simplifies to negative 4. So hopefully you know that your slope is negative 4. I'm going to go ahead and plug in that information. Y equals negative 4x plus b. Now I just need to utilize my point. And it said my point was 2, 5. Okay, just don't mix up the x value and the y value. That's a common mistake because the y comes first and then the x if you're reading from left to right. But we know that in the point, it's x that comes first and y that comes last. So there's always that reversal there. The y value is 5 and the x value is 2. Be very careful here. All right? When you start to simplify this, you say 5 equals negative 8 plus b. And sometimes we get lazy at the end and we want to just start throwing out numbers like, oh, it must be negative 3 or it must be 3 or whatever. But you want to go through the whole algebraic process because you're going to find when you add 8 to both sides, you don't get any version of 3, you get 13. So just, be solid all the way until the end. So it's going to cross that y-axis at 13. Okay, so I'm going to put this information together. Final equation, y equals negative 4x plus 13. You can even envision what this graph is going to look like, right? On a coordinate plane, it's going to cross the y-axis all the way up at 13. It's got a steep negative slope, so it's coming down very, very steeply. Going down the roller coaster in a steep manner, okay? Something along those lines. But at this point, you should be able to visualize what these graphs look like in your head, even if they're not exact. All right, good job tonight. Feel free to go back and rewatch anything that you need to. And if you need extra help, just come and see me at Breaker after school or get help from your group mates tomorrow during DMR. All right, thank you guys. Good luck with the assignment.